welcome everybody to Loop and Learn's open mic, turning your little loopers into T1D Titans, moving the kids towards T1D independence, starring Joe Donahue and Team and Hammer. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves in just a second, but let's just scroll forward and go through our disclosure. The Loop is a do-it-yourself closed loop algorithm to help automate insulin delivery. It is experimental and not approved by the FDA. Patches or customizations are even more experimental. This presentation is provided to assist you in making your own decisions in consultation with your healthcare professionals regarding your own diabetes self-management. You take full responsibility for building and running the system and do so at your own risk.
Awesome. Do you want to go ahead with the next one too, Carol?
Why don't you guys do it actually? I think that will get you right in there.
All righty. So I'll introduce Joe. He's a dad of 4 daughters, Sophia, Naomi, Violet, and Jessica, the 3 oldest of whom have type 1 diabetes. At diagnosis, Joe looked for a cure on the internet and he found DIY looping, which seemed like the next best thing. After figuring out how to use a Mac, which took a little bit of effort, he got Sophia looping by January 2019. Now Joe sometimes sees his daughters change their equipment all by themselves, even in the middle of the night. And he has quite a story and wants other parents to know that things get easier and kids learn fast.
Tina, you did a great job reading that.
And as you probably know, I'm a Loop and Learn moderator. And I have 3 kids, the youngest of whom has type 1 diabetes. That is Reese, and he was diagnosed in July of 2019, so a little bit after Joe found Loop. We joined the community just right at 3 years ago, and we've learned that consistently taking baby steps does result in big leaps when you look back at things. And I agree with Joe. All right. Anything else, Joe?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that none of us have it figured out, right? I mean, this is the title was really, really huge, this sense that our kids are all independent. I think the big thing that I want to emphasize at the start is we're all moving towards independence and trying to help our kids navigate the disease for the future as well. So that's all I really was saying, is that we really, none of us really have it figured out. And that's what's awesome about Loop and Learn and the online looping community, is that we're all helping one another. So, so that's about it.
Well, Joe has an amazing story. He and I were talking recently and I was just blown away. And so he's going to share some of that with us before we get started on this. And his story is also really reassuring to me, and I think it will be to many of you.
Yeah, so I'm like the rest of you. I did not expect, woke up one day and realized that my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and didn't expect it. Sophia had been healthy and strong, and then she started drinking. She started showing all the signs, and after we kind of figured out, the endo told us get to the hospital. We drove like crazy to the hospital, and sure enough, spent the night on the emergency room floor waiting, and got the diagnosis officially the next day. Sophie was in DKA, like a lot of your kids have been. And we spent the next few days getting educated, and then kicked out of the door and said, okay, you got this, go figure it out. So I was like a lot of you, like was said in the intro, I'm like, there's got to be a cure, right? I mean, this is 2019. There's got to be a cure for type 1 diabetes. There's no way they haven't developed a cure yet. And apart from using cinnamon, we stumbled onto the DIY looping artificial pancreas, and we started Sophia looping as soon as we could, actually it was about a year after her diagnosis. Then 2020 rolled around. I think I said 2019. I misspoke. Sophie was diagnosed in 2017. Then in 2020, Naomi was showing all the signs. We did a finger stick test, and sure enough, her blood sugar was high. And so I took the extra supplies that we had with Sophie. We had a backup Riley Link, we had a backup iPhone, we had a backup Dexcom and Omnipod, and we put them on her. And we had her basal rate figured out before the endocrinologist ever saw her, and which was just great.
Isn't that
And
mind blowing?
it is. And our endo was very kind and said, you know what you're doing, but I don't recommend it, for anybody else. Then about 6 months later, Violet on Easter Sunday, she'd been showing all the signs, and she was feeling really yucky, and simple finger stick test, and her blood sugar was ridiculously high as well. And the same story, we grabbed the spare parts from the artificial pancreas and had her looping before she saw the endo, had her basal rate figured out before she saw the endo. So we are a looping family. That's who we are. And I really am grateful to be here, because had it not been for all the people that have shared bits and pieces of their story and their knowledge along the way, our kids would not be experiencing a healthier life. And so I'm grateful for that. So that's our story. I don't know who that third child is, that fourth child. That is not my fourth daughter. I'm just going to point that out on the slide. I do have another daughter. Her name is Jessica, and she did not make the cut, apparently. I'll tell her later.
Well, this is a type 1 kids talk. So we've got your 3 and then mine. This is Reese over here.
There we go. Hello, Reese.
Yeah. So, all righty. Well, are you ready to get started with the meat of the discussion?
Yes, I am.
All right.
So I think the first thing that I thought through when we started talking about what have we done that has helped our kids move more towards independence. And it's not necessarily just related to looping. So if you are, if you're a parent out there, you haven't decided yet to loop or not, you're just watching the video, this is really type 1 diabetes related more so than loop. So looking back at maybe some of the things I did, one of the things was just simply to encourage exploration. We let our girls explore the defective pods, the defective Dexcom sensors. We busted them up with hammers on the garage floor. We looked at the big jabby needle on the inside of the pod, which scared everybody. Stuck them in the freezer, submerged them in water just to see about their durability. Put them in ketchup, the Dexcom, to see if it, what the sensor would read. Sprayed it with sunblock. But we did a lot of hands-on stuff with it. And then when we were troubleshooting, like the Riley Link, if you have an older Riley Link and you're not on the dash looping system yet, the paper clip trick, troubleshooting the lights when they would not be blinking correctly. Then the orange link, it was all right to get the terminal to connect. We did a little bit of everything, even including we have a desktop computer that we have sitting on top of one of our downstairs area things, whatever it's called, Curio something. And their Night Scout site is built into one web browser, and all the kids can see where each other is at any given time. And so they're able to explore that by looking at what they ate, see where their carbs or see what needed to be adjusted to see if they peaked too high or if they went too low. And they're also able to look in on their sisters as well. So those are just some of the little things that we did, the hands-on stuff to let them start exploring their pancreas.
That's really great that they can see each other's stats at any time and be able to help each other out that way. So the first thing I want to talk about is teaching T1D positivity. It's really, really easy sometimes to not be positive, to be negative and say things like, I hate diabetes and, curse diabetes. But we made the choice really early on to not do that, because this is our world and it's what we have to live with, and what we needed to adapt to and ultimately embrace. And so I felt that would not be helpful. And I always want to be empathetic with his situation. If he's if he's struggling with blood sugars, or if he's just even in a really bad mood, might be related. And always put relationship first. So just really try not to say things that could make him feel worse about the situation in any way. And I've also told him, a few times I've said, a lot of people, most people have something that they have to deal with. People have different types of physical issues they have to deal with. People have different mental issues they have to deal with. And this is our thing. This is what we have to deal with. And we just do.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, no, that's awesome. Another thing that we would do is we basically, I guess, if you want a heading, it's the supply awareness, to know where their supplies were. Like we're like every other family. We travel. We don't just stay in the kitchen, but we travel. We're in hotels and we're in cars and we're on vacation and we're with visiting family. And when we travel, we always communicated to them, this is where we're putting your supplies. This is where your insulin is. This is where your pods are, your Dexcom. That way, they're not depending on us if they have a failure, a site failure, sensor failure, error message, that they knew where their stuff was, so they wouldn't get stressed out. They would know where it was. And I think that was just comforting for them, that they kind of learned where their supplies were all the time. And that was one step towards independence. Am I still on? Because my
yes.
computer is acting crazy. Okay, great.
In my view, your picture is frozen, but I can hear your voice.
That's a terrible thing. All right. So I'll try to get something going again here in a minute.
Yeah. So that's a really great point, making sure they know where everything is, especially the most critical supplies, and that they need to know where they are, and that they have what they need with them. And the another big thing that we've tried to do is let him navigate his own type 1, mature at his own rate, and then take charge as he feels comfortable, handle different aspects of management. And he did his first shots in the hospital. He started helping us, do carb counting. He started helping us decide, make all types of decisions at different times. And it for a long time, it was that I would say, if you feel like you need sugar, talk to me about it. And eventually it became that I said, if you need sugar, you get it. You get whatever you need. You have whatever you need. And then if we need to react with insulin or some other way, we'll do it. But it's up to you. And actually, that was a really huge step, and it took him a long time to get used to. And then staying home alone is another big example. So he was 9 when he was diagnosed, and a couple years later he turns 11, which is when we've let our older kids stay home alone. And I remember talking with Carol about this when he was 11. I was like, it's kind of that age where he can be staying home alone, and she's like, let him kind of steer that. And I really thought that was great advice, and I did. And he was 12 when he first said, "Can I stay home by myself?" And I'm like, "Yes, you can. Absolutely." And it's just been, with staying alone, he needed to be able to handle things himself. And he was at that point when he could, with parents looking in from afar. But that was a very big step, really. Joe? Is Joe still there? I'm not sure where Joe is. Carol, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I had my phone on mute. I was trying to make sure there's no background noise.
Okay. Where did Joe go?
But Joe is having some internet issues, so he might,
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to continue, and then I'm gonna when he gets back, we'll head back to the things that I know that he wants to talk about next. But I'll keep going. And
Uh-oh.
is he back? No. So another thing is this is kind of related to what I was saying, not place the whole burden on him. I've actually seen kids come to Boy Scout camp, or one kid come to Boy Scout camp who was newly diagnosed, had his insulin pens and, some glucagon that nobody else ever knew anything about other than me, and just was let out into the wild. And that's a heck of a burden. And that's a long way from having him manage all his meals and everything himself, or having a type 1 manage all their meals themselves. But I've just wanted to gradually build up so that he doesn't feel burdened and that he can grow into managing his type 1. And, for a while there, we were catering to his every type 1 need. And we realized, okay, we don't need to do this. He can get up and go do that himself. And it never became, well, you can do that, just go do it. It's, in a negative sort of way. But we would say, hey, why don't you go get this and take care of, whatever aspect it was himself. And it's funny because that was a kind of a mindset shift for us too. And, we also still, can hold his hand when he needs it, both literally and figuratively. Literally, when he changes pods, if we're around, because he does do that without us around, I'll hold his hand while he's doing the insertion, and that's just kind of our thing. So let's see. My next thing is about kids learning and teaching about type 1. He and I have spent a good bit of time studying type 1 diabetes and endocrine information in general. So he knows some of the biochemistry behind it, and he knows places to look to learn more about it, and he finds it very interesting. So having him have that understanding and have developed that interest is also really great, because it just gives him more of a basis to feel comfortable with his type 1. He also, I also, make sure not to say, this means you're going to be an endocrinologist or something like that when you're older. I think it's very easy kind of to push in that direction. And we just really try not to. So another thing he started doing when he was younger was making videos about pod changes, about his Dexcom, about when he was, when he had started using the pods. He did a whole video about how that works and how to do it. And then a couple years ago, he made video for Loop and Learn, talking about what Loop is and teaching how to work it and everything. And that's still available on the site. And it's something that people use a lot to this day. Excuse me. We also encourage him, when it's reasonable, to present about type 1 to groups, because it's always beneficial for people to know, number one, the signs of type 1, just in case they have them, but number two, what might be going on with Reese. And recently, here's Joe. Recently, we did something where one of the kids, when he heard part of it, his jaw just dropped. And I've seen a difference in the way he actually treats Reese since then, treats him with more respect. And Reese is actually really proud to be a type 1, if you can imagine that. And he has no problem talking about it with other people. Welcome back, Joe. You're muted, so unmute. And I scrolled down a little bit. I'm going to scroll back up, and we're at I'll show you where we are. If I can get there. Hang on a minute.
Hey, Tina.
Yes.
There's a little break in the action. I know there are a few kids that have joined us today, and I don't know if they want to, just say hi for a minute while we get reorganized here.
That would be awesome.
Your child around?
We had battle other boy, but now I don't see them. Maybe Tommaso can say hello. He's not living with type 1, but he's a little brother of Mia. Say hi.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi, yes, come, Thomas, say hi.
Hi. Hi.
Tell him about Luke.
Thanks for Lube and
Aw.
everything. And
How do you feel with Luke?
good.
Why?
Mm,
What do you have? Tell them about your superpower hero.
I can eat when I put carb.
Yes. You do it by yourself or I add it for you?
By myself.
Good boy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for popping in to say
Thank
hello.
you.
That is
No,
great.
goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back, Joe.
Hey, yeah, I apologize. I'd like to accept responsibility for it, but I'm going to blame my computer.
All right. It's all you.
Tell me where we are.
We are at encouraging problem solving.
Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to encouraging problem solving, sorry about that. One thing I've tried to do, and it's still a work in progress, is not do it for them, but ask them questions about their Bluetooth or about their equipment. Have you restarted it? Have you, we try to troubleshoot all of those things together. And I find that they're often, when they do run into an issue now, they'll say, I've already restarted my phone, or I've already reset my Bluetooth, or I've already done these little things that I'd always ask them about before. Then other things that we do is really letting them choose their sites when they're going to put on their Dexcom or their Omnipod. Instead of telling them where they're going to do that, we invited them to choose. If they're nervous about putting it on their sides, then it's okay. Let's figure out another place to do it. But we respected them and gave them some autonomy when it came to choice, because we know that for them, it's not an ideal thing, period. And for them to be able to choose where their sites go, it gave them a bit of freedom and taught them a little bit how to manage their care, but then to celebrate the accomplishments as well when they would manage their care right. So it helped them out a little bit. So that's what I have to say about that, as far as giving them choices, encouraging that, problem solving, just asking them questions to see if they've already thought through, what they need to do and move forward. And I'm still getting my notes pulled up. So
That's really great. And that's something, that gives me something to think about, to put on my list to start doing. Really great.
good. Would you like me to continue?
With the next one, or?
Yeah, I have no idea where we're at. So thank you for the T1D world. I love everybody here. You're all family. So I have no idea. I've got 2 computers open and my cell phone, and I'm trying to see all my notes and everything.
So while you get organized, Joe, I'll say that what you do with your children about asking the troubleshooting steps they've already taken is just the exact way that adults need to think about the steps of solving these problems, right? People say, I've done everything. Well, what exactly is everything? Have you turned everything on and off? Have you deleted? Like, what did you do? So it's
Got
really
it.
helpful to start
Yeah.
back at basics.
Well, and that kind of goes into my next point, and I'm not sure if this has already been covered because I haven't heard anything that was shared.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, about avoiding overprotecting, like to avoid the hovering. And I know all of us hover. Like when Sophie was first diagnosed, I'm on the soccer field and I'm watching her running up and down the field. Are you low? Are you and trying to get the Dexcom reading because it disconnected. But I realize that overprotecting when it comes to managing type 1 really kind of shows the kids we don't trust their decision making. We don't trust them to make right decisions. And so it's learning how to not overprotect, because we do have kids that don't necessarily understand and know, but there's finding that balance between giving them guidance and overprotecting them.
Can I add something to that too?
Yeah.
It also can be dangerous to do that, because you get to a point where, this is me, I'm speaking for myself. I've gotten to a point where I feel like, well, he knows this and he'll be doing this. And I think he's going to be doing something that he's not thinking of doing. And so I've had to back up a little bit and in that area.
Yeah. I definitely have seen, I think all of us have seen parts of that we're doing. Like it's, I thought of the Night Scout, the remote, being able to remote in with Night Scout to give a little bit of insulin if they're riding real high. And meanwhile, they've already looked at their phone and taken care of it. We just haven't got that reading yet. So it's a trust. I would trust them to enter the codes on the Dexcom app early on. They would enter that in, whether it's by snapping a picture now, but it used to be just the code, and entering their transmitter number with a G6 inside the Loop app. That's a learning curve for me, because early on when I messed up, it was because I didn't do it. I didn't put the transmitter ID in. So now the kids, man, they enter their transmitter ID numbers in all their own. They enter their sensor numbers in. They don't need me to take care of them doing that. They're doing it now, which is really awesome.
That is so awesome.
So when it comes to developing courage, I don't know how many of you have done this. I put a Dexcom sensor on myself because I wanted to see what it felt like when it went in. And it took a lot for me to press that orange button. Like I just really struggled with that. And so I'm tensing up all my muscles and I've got it on my abdomen and I push it in. And of course I hit a nerve and I had a big bruise there, and it was ridiculous. My youngest daughter, when she was diagnosed, she struggles with anxiety, and she still does. Pushing that orange button would be one time it was at least a 3-hour process where she was screaming and she was crying and, panic attacks. I don't want to do it. And now Violet puts that Dexcom on, takes it off, no problem. And it wasn't just that first time that was hard. It was a series of months before she really developed courage. And I think that's important to understand, is these little steps are all developing courage for these kids, whether it's wearing their pods in public, or whether it's doing a finger stick in class, or whether it's, taking glucose in the classroom. Every one of these steps that the kids have to take, it's all a part of developing courage. And that's something that, if we are overbearing and overprotecting, they're not going to develop that courage.
Yeah. And in our world, that's been a little bit of an issue for Reese sometimes, when, he's like, well, you're not supposed to take food in here. And I say, your situation is different. You can take your supplies wherever you need to go. And that's been, that's happened with different aspects of his needs. And I just have to reiterate over and over again, yes, you can. And show him you know, for example, we went into the State Bureau of Investigation building a couple weeks ago, and there was a sign that said no bags, and that you like couldn't take a person or anything. And I'm like, we're taking your diabetes bag in. He's like, Mom, I can just take stuff and put it in my pocket. I'm like, we're taking the bag in. And he, you know, he didn't realize this, but the whole point was to show him how to handle it. And it was not a problem with them. And, you know, we went in, but getting so he feels strong enough to assert his rights.
Yeah,
That is a
advocating for
process.
himself. Yeah, advocating for himself. You know, that is a huge thing, and that does take courage because, you know, we teach our kids respect your adults, right? Adults are almost always right, you know, but the good adults are, and teach them how to respect and listen to rules and obey. And then all of a sudden, it's you don't have to. We can take snacks into the football game. We can bring in water or juice or something to drink. So yeah, those are all, you know, my kids demonstrate so much courage. It's unbelievable. And I'm impressed by them every single day.
Do they like synergize in that way?
No, not really. You know, they're still teenagers and they're still sisters. So, you know, it is funny how they respect their devices though. You know, like they're not in an argument. They don't walk over and rip a Dexcom off or something like that. So it's, you know, it's good to see that they respect each other enough and respect each other's devices enough. But, I mean, they do a bit of reciprocating as far as encouraging each other, but it's not an all the time thing.
Yeah.
I think that was really early on in the initial diagnosis of Naomi and Violet, where Sophie was right there encouraging. So
that would be neat to hear more about one of these days. Okay, it's you again.
Oh, is it? All right. So valuing effort over outcome. This is not a grade. We you know, the kids don't get an A on diabetes management every single day, and they don't get an F every single day. What I want them to do is try. That's what I want. Try to troubleshoot. Like if you're in your classroom and your pod is just disconnected from the Loop app, try to figure it out. If your sensor fails, try to figure out what's wrong with that. So one of the things that we really try to do is just value that effort. Now it's a different story if they don't try. We're not going to value that, but we are going to value the effort, and we're going to tell them, hey, look, you did all the right things and we still don't know why it's not connecting. You did everything right. This isn't your fault. So that's what I mean by valuing effort over outcome.
So also we want to celebrate their wins, which sometimes are, you know, huge, sometimes are little, but they are collective. And acknowledging Reese's growth in his understanding and his management has been really helpful to him in terms of building his confidence, but it's also been really helpful to all of us because it just helps, you know, him get firmer footing under himself.
Yeah, they need that, don't they? Like just a little bit of encouragement, just to celebrate that. Like you did right. You did a great job. It's good. So along our journey, and it's really along the same line of the idea of celebrating, it is going to mess up. You know, parents, if you're sitting back looking for a great system, it's not perfect. It is the best thing, in my opinion, to a working pancreas. But there's a lot of errors. There's errors in the build process that we've all experienced, but there's also errors when it's just running, the connection issues and the, you know, oh gosh, just pods fail. And when we're troubleshooting and when we're trying to figure it out, I really try to go above and beyond, and let's blame the gadgets, not them. I don't want them to feel dumb for not being able to figure it out, because we're sitting down on the couch and it's 2 a.m. and we're trying to figure it out together and we don't know. So we like to blame the devices, blame the gadgets, not the kid. They are living with a life-threatening disease for, every day. They wake up with it, they go to bed with it. And so all I want to do is try to encourage them. I don't want to add to their stress. And that's the thing that I have some regret about. As my oldest daughter moves into her teenage years, she's being less responsible with some things and more focused on other things. And I often end up with my foot in my mouth because I might allude to, you're not taking care of yourself. Why didn't you troubleshoot this? Or why didn't you do that? And then I have to go back and apologize. It doesn't happen often, but it happens enough to make me go, oh, I got to get better at this part of it of let's blame the devices. This is troubleshooting. Nerds with Insulet, created these devices, and we don't have the ability to know every in and out. So let's encourage the kids and blame the devices, not them.
Those darn devices that we love with all of our hearts.
Like mine just shut down and restarted and shut down and restarted 3 times this morning. So,
wow. Yeah. And mine did that earlier. It must be the day. Huh. So, I've already accidentally gone to the next slide, but this one is, that connecting with others and mentoring are really great. So seeking out and providing opportunities for Reese to be around other type 1 kids has been really helpful. And we've done that locally, but we've also done it through children with diabetes at Friends for Life conference in Orlando. It's a really great thing.
It looks
awesome.
like you're still on the moving our kids towards T1D independence slide 18. I don't think you moved forward.
Well, she's on the connect and mentor part right underneath blame the gadgets.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. But being around, kids his own age and older people with type 1 or who are in the type 1 space is really helpful to him and to us too. And he's hung out with Carol a good bit. And she even helped him build for the first time a while back. And that's something I very highly recommend, is having your kid help you, be with you, watch you build, help you build themselves and start learning about this. It was really cool when I saw what happened when he was doing that. There were things that I would probably have stumbled with, and he just didn't bother him at all, but that's a really great area where they can actually take some ownership and make some strides too, especially kids who are tech lovers.
Right.
So
yeah, to see them gravitate with that common ground towards other kids. Like where it seems like wherever we've moved, there's a newly diagnosed person right there. And, we've recently had an opportunity to come alongside a family. Somebody was just diagnosed, and the girls have been just incredible about showing their parents, this is my Omnipod and this is my Dexcom, and this is how I do this and manage it. So yeah, I think it's really like a family thread of, when I see other families that with T1D, I just want to hug them. I see them, and it drives my kids crazy too, by the way, but I'll see a Dexcom or an Omnipod out in public, and I'll go talk to her.
Reese does that too. I mean, we all do that, but Reese has gotten so he'll go over there himself too. Yeah. And mentoring younger kids, he's become a hero to some younger kids, and he has his hero too, who's had type 1 longer than he has and who is a bit older than he is. And, one thing I want to say or add to that is kids can mentor when they know nothing about taking care of their diabetes. They can just show kids that they live with diabetes and that it is, they can still smile, they can still run, they can still eat what they want, what their parents want, basically.
What the parents will let them eat. Right.
Exactly. And then, that they can thrive. And that, so mentoring extends past, teaching about type 1, which is a really great place to, or a great thing to do. Joe?
Yeah. So even you mentioned that about mentoring younger, but it's not just mentoring younger either. Like we have a family friend that was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and now she's in her 30s. And, she was in a student ministry that I was her youth pastor years ago. And now she's in her 30s. She was just diagnosed. Sophia hasn't seen her in 15 years, but she sends a video message to her just to say, hey, look, I know it stinks, but you got this. And,
That is so great.
it's going to get better.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. All right. So as you heard earlier, we're not there yet. And there are lots of things that we're still working on, and we thought we'd go over a few.
Yeah. One story I want to share, because I know this is why everyone's, they're kind of listening. Naomi went away this fall 2 weekend trips for volleyball without any parent, without any nurse, doctor, and she managed T1D and her devices all by herself, and her blood sugar was great, and she had a thriving weekend. And she was able to take care of it all. So now one thing that we all are working on is that double checking the blood sugar before those activities. So, I might be sitting back at home texting her, what's your blood sugar? Are you doing okay? Of course, I can see it all on Night Scout. But
you want to make sure she knows it.
Right. Well, right. Yeah, I know you're at 95 right now, but you're about to go into a match. So, so trying to get better at, I guess I'm trying to get better at everything that we've just talked about.
Yeah. So Reese is a year-round swimmer, and his swim practices are 1.5 to 2 hours long. And we have to, every day that he has practice, I have to work really hard to prepare him for, to make sure his IOB is at an acceptable level when he's going into practice. We don't want it too high, or else we can have trouble. And make sure if he needs carbs, he has them. Make sure if we need to put on or suspend basal, we do that. Things like that, put on a high override. And he does do finger sticks when he's in the pool, but at this point, he's not doing them yet. It's one of us 2 parents that is there, and we do it at 1 or 2 times during the swim practice. And then at swim meets, swim meets are a whole different thing, and we've worked out our way of doing that too. But he has a lot to learn about how to manage at swim meets, so that he stays safe and doesn't need, any urgent intervention. So that's something that those 2 things are something we're working on, because ideally, soon he'll be doing his own management during swim practice. That's one of my goals for months ahead.
He's going to be awesome at it. I see my face is frozen. Is my voice frozen too?
Nope. Gotcha.
Okay.
So, and then, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was only going to provide a comment that my kids are going to really think it's funny. My face is frozen on the video. So
that's funny. So, Reese, like I think I said, is 13 right now, and it's going to be a while before he starts driving a car. But when he starts driving a car, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to get used to. There's a lot of things that are going to need to become second nature. And I've started working on one of those already, and that is checking his blood sugar before he ever gets in a car, or as he gets in a car now, because he's not driving, checking his blood sugar, checking, his IOB, his whole situation around insulin, so that he's got that habit in place before he starts driving. Anything else that you want to add right now, Joe? Did we lose Joe again?
Well, Tina, I will say that checking your blood glucose before you drive is a good habit for everybody.
Yes.
And even for, I will tell you, that's one of the things before the advent of CGMs, where I was pretty strict about making sure my husband, a grown man, was checking his blood glucose. If he's going to be driving my family, he needs to be in tip top shape.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I want him doing that, you know, throughout his life. And I think that is just a great habit to go ahead and get started on. And then I have on here that if other people that are here today or that see this video down the line have experiences and tips to share about any of this, there should be a comment section on YouTube when this gets posted, and we would love to see what you have to say. All right. I think Joe has,
Tina, is it time to open it up to some questions while we're waiting for Joe to come back up?
yes, it is. I'm gonna,
Or anyone to
whoops.
share information?
You want to, if you do, please unmute.
So are there any lurkers out there? People have been thinking about looping and aren't quite sure if that's what they want to do. We can answer those questions as well. Or if you want to talk about how to get your kids to be independent, we can do that too.
Yeah. So I stopped sharing. Is that correct?
Sure.
I mean, I did, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So I'm excited about this topic. I've been asking about having a session like this for a long time because I know it's so much to teach. Everything from getting the pods and CGMs working together, and then also managing loop.
Yeah. And when Reese was younger and I started thinking about how in the world is he going to handle this someday? There's just so much to it. You know, it's like, well, people do it and baby steps and start now.
All right, so
you know?
Batul raised her hand. Batul, what's your question?
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
just a little question. It's early for it, but I want to ask you. My son, he was diabetic since he was 2.5 years. For that, he don't know the life without diabetic. He like diabetic, he like insulin, like count carb, everything. But I think maybe we will face some problem when he will be a teenager. Maybe he will refuse this. Anyone face a problem like this? This is my biggest fear. I am thinking about it for the future. I'm fear about that day he will refuse the insulin or refuse the diabetic or said why I don't want.
That is something, you know, you do hear about people who, when they're teenagers and even a little older, that are, you know, they're in denial or they reject good management. And I think that's probably something that all of us parents of younger people think about and, you know, have fear of as they're getting older. And, you know, my thought about that is the best we can do is just make it easy for it not to be a problem for them. Help them know as much as they can about it. Don't overburden them. Don't shame them. Don't make them feel like it's, you know, like type 1 is the devil. It's just part of their physiology, and we have to do things that other people don't have to do to support that part of their physiology. And hopefully we can just pass that along to them as they, you know, move into the real independence later in their teen years, you know. And we do see a lot of people. We even have people in, you know, very, very active people in our Loop and Learn community who have a history of disregarding their diabetes, who are now very, very strong loopers, who are experts, and who are just fine.
All right,
Yeah.
so Brandy had a question.
Joe's back.
Oh, I'll let Joe in. Brandy, why don't you go?
Hi. Sorry, I was responding to one of the questions. But okay, so my question was, I just did my first rebuild a couple days ago, and I guess I'm a new looper, just 3 months in. It's great. I love the system. Thank you, everyone involved. So loop expired and we were not prepared for it. And we weren't home and it was really inconvenient. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. But we thought that when that happened, that the loop, the pump would just stop working. And so we assumed until we got back home and were able to rebuild loop, that there was no way he was getting more insulin. And I did not have anything back up on me because I never need it. So he went about 3 hours, my son, with getting zero insulin. And I couldn't figure out how he didn't go high. He stayed like under 120, 130. He was exercising. So I thought maybe that's why. And I just kept saying the insulin gods are on our side today. Well, turns out once Loop was back up and running, and I was able then to access the app and look at the history, it was continuing to give him boluses, which he needed, right? I couldn't see any of that activity because I couldn't access the Loop app, but because it was expired. But is that normal? Like, can that?
I'm surprised it gave boluses. I would expect it to continue to deliver scheduled basal.
Yeah.
The boluses kind of surprises me.
Okay. Someone that's been looping for many, many years told me I should post this in Loop and Learn, just, because she thought the same thing, that maybe it was
This is
an
actually one
outlier.
of those questions that I'd love to have Marion weigh in on. And unfortunately, Marion's not with us today. But yes, you should post it and we'll tag Marion. And,
Okay. It was a godsend. Whatever happened, I'm so thankful it happened that way. But
well, things
yeah, and
somehow
can I?
worked out.
What's that? I'm sorry.
So it just worked out that the CGM and the phone and your pump continued to work together, despite the fact you hadn't put that important date on your calendar.
That's exactly right, which I'll never do again.
In
But
the next version of Loop, there will be a reminder.
oh, wonderful.
Oh, that's
And
so fabulous.
could I just answer Chad's question that we posted in the comments about teens not bolusing for food?
Sure.
So I just want to say my son is 12 and he's really, really responsible and very mature for his age. Couldn't have picked a better person to give diabetes to because he is, for his age, he's just really well behaved about it. So, which is wonderful, right? But now that he's getting older and more independent, he is bucking the system when he's at school or at a friend's house or just playing. He just wants to be a kid. And while I'm all for independence and making sure he knows how to take care of himself, we
Mhm.
also believe that there's a really nice balance between making sure he knows how to take care of himself, but never making it feel like a burden, even though of course it is. And so as soon as we sense any angst or like he's annoyed with it, we immediately take control and don't even talk about it. That could last a couple
That's
hours.
so
It could
great.
last
Good,
a meal. It
good
could last a
job.
couple days. Yeah. And so I've had a lot of people tell me, like in the, different web, not in Loop and Learn, but in a lot of the different support groups, like, don't do that. He's 12. He should be taking care of himself. He needs to bolus himself. Don't go to Loop just so that you can remotely bolus him. But I disagree. And I just want to say, I have a kid who's super responsible and super capable of taking care of himself, but he just doesn't sometimes. And I never yell at him. And that is the reason that I went to Loop. That is the reason I went to Loop, so that I could use the caregiver app to remotely bolus him. And all we ask him is, like, we just say, please just tell us when you eat. He often does. He sometimes doesn't. But having the access to use the caregiver app and remotely bolus him has been a godsend. And so I highly recommend anyone who's not using it. That was the reason we switched to Loop. And then we ended up getting all these other amazing benefits and tighter control. So thank you.
I think having Night Scout is so, and these other apps too are so helpful, not only in helping us manage, but helping them, helping them grow into management, because we can see so much and we don't have to interact. And I think having us not interact helps them grow.
All right. So Lee had a question.
Can't hear you, Lee.
Okay, it's Leah.
Yes.
Addressing the kids not bolusing. We went through, my son is 14. We actually are on IAPS. We kind of switch back and forth, but he has a tendency to forget that he has diabetes because this has made his life so much better. Between, it's a pod, it's his phone, and it's a G7 sensor. So don't always account that they didn't, or so, I mean, what better response would you want than, I'm sorry, I forgot I had diabetes for a minute. So we just dose and move on. I know, it's great.
I love that.
That is
I
awesome.
love that. Anybody else have a question? Or something to add?
Catherine Blanton had a question
Oh,
in
sorry.
chat. I don't know if she wants to ask it directly.
Hey everyone. You actually kind of answered on there. It was just in general, how long did y'all choose to treat your children's diabetes traditionally before you started looping? We're about 5 weeks out from my son, who was 12 at the time, just turned 13, being diagnosed with T1D.
So
That
I don't have a
different
child,
people.
but let me
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Tina, just one thing. So we did a poll on this, actually. What are the important things you want to know before you start to loop? And most of our members thought knowing how to use a pod, knowing how to use a CGM were good skills, but not for months. Like, you know, they actually thought, I would have thought for months. They said a couple of weeks was plenty. And my very good friend, Kenny Fox, actually thinks that by using a tool like Loop, you learn more about diabetes and how your body reacts to things like food and insulin, because there's so much data in the app.
It's
ahead,
so
Tina.
nice to be able to see. Yeah,
Yes.
we personally were over a year in when he started looping. He was at 6 months when he started on the pump, which I was excited about. And then right before he started, I was second guessing that. And then after his first bolus on the pod, there was no looking back. I was just super excited about it. I wasn't there yet in terms of believing that Loop was the right system for us or that DIY was right for us. But a few more months of lack of sleep got me there. If you were here in the beginning for Joe's story, I'm not sure if Joe's still here.
I am. I'm
Okay.
surprisingly, I've made it through.
So, will you answer that too about when yours started again? I'm not sure if she was here when you talked about that.
Sure. I mean, we had our kids looping when we, because of our first daughter was diagnosed, we had all the extra supplies and we had her looping. Then we, when the next two kids were diagnosed, we diagnosed them. We diagnosed them at the house. We diagnosed them at the hotel while we were traveling, and just put the extra supplies on. And before the endocrinologist first saw them, we already had their basal rate figured out, and they were not experiencing any lows at night. So for us, you know, it's probably different because we already had the supplies, already had the knowledge of what to do. So for us, it was a no-brainer. Let's start the girls looping right away.
Well, there is a moment of the silence, so I would like to share our experience. My daughter, when she was diagnosed, I knew about the looping like 1 month after her diagnosis from our endocrinologist, but she didn't know nothing about lupus. She just knew that it exists. So then it took like 3 more months for me to get all the supplies, because we were living in Slovakia and there is no Omnipod. I'm from Europe, and there was nobody around who had the knowledge about the looping. So I started to try to get all the things I needed and starting to learn from the first moment. And I have to say that it was the best thing I could do. And I do agree that if I would not loop, I don't know if I would ever know so many things about diabetes.
And your use of Loop has been beneficial to people all over the world. She's Mir's helping lots of people now with that. So,
Yeah.
any other questions? All right. Well, we are just over an hour. I think we did pretty good there. Want to remind people that to always remember your kids' diabetes may vary, and it will. Joe can certainly attest to that with seeing it in real time with 3 examples at all times. This is a marathon, not a sprint, and sometimes that's hard to remember, but it remains true. Frequent changes are the norm during adolescence, and that doesn't mean only with blood sugars and how insulin behaves in the body, but it also involves, you know, the psyche of the adolescent. And, you know, ebbing and flowing is a thing that we need to embrace, really. On the road to independence, there are often times when kids need more help than they may have recently. Maybe they need help with something that they didn't need help with, that they know how to do. And it's good to be able to just get in there and help them, because we all know backup is good with, you know, anything we do at any age. And that's certainly true with type 1. So we also want to share that if people are interested in supporting the community's volunteer efforts monetarily, we always recommend donating to the Night Scout Foundation. Night Scout is an invaluable tool for us loopers, and we want to thank you for looping with us.
I am choosing not to
Thank
say
you.
anything at this point because I don't want to shut down and crash my computer.
Well, Joe, you know, I was thinking that I wish I had taken a screenshot of your kids' Night Scouts the other day. Maybe I'll find that and post it in the comments to the
Oh, I'll
invitation.
send it. Oh yeah.
It was
The kids.
awesome.
Yeah. It's
It was
always great to post to see the lines that are the nice green lines across Night Scout and no red, not even any yellow. But my reality is different. So with the 3 kids in one browser, I might have one in the red, high or low, you know, and one in the green. And so it's just, it is definitely different when they hit the teenage years and their bodies are their own bodies.
So Joe, do you ever get confused about which kid, like, do you ever tell one of your loopers the wrong thing because you were thinking of one of the others?
I don't even call them the right names. Yes. And so I try to keep them all in the same build, keep them all in the same iOS, keep them all in the same iPhone. That helps eliminate, some things. But the basal, I don't even remember who has this basal rate and the other basal rate. You know, I don't remember any of that.
That's
It's
awesome.
mind-blowing what you have going on there.
Like 3 GitHub accounts, 3 passwords, it's just, it's ridiculous.
Switchboard.
Right.